What's the most shocking thing you've ever caught somebody doing? Probably not safe for work. Story 1. A few years ago, I had to work at a sketchy gas station in a sketchy part of town. We were locked behind bulletproof glass, there was a safe room behind the counter, and we occasionally had cops respond to a call and then just stay there for the rest of the overnight shift because the cop felt we needed him. Basically, I was extremely poor, and this was the only place that had called me back when I was applying for jobs. I got lucky and mostly worked the day shifts. One day, in the middle of the day, we're slow, and I'm staring out the window counting down the hours till my shift ends, and I see a fat, crazy-looking black lady wearing a tiny little skirt and a ripped tank top. She grabs a shred of newspaper off the ground, squats, pisses, rubs the newspaper down there, and throws it down. We had an outside cooler of popsicles that people would grab and then pay for inside. Rarely did they get paid for. I don't know why we had them outside. We must have lost a lot of money. Anyways, she goes up that cooler, grabs a popsicle, unwraps it, and alternative shoves it in her mouth and her vag, catcalling every gent who walked within a 20-foot radius. I called the cops on her, but for a good 5 minutes I stood there watching her, wondering what the hell my life was coming to and whether or not living in this city was worth it. Story 2. Working as a security officer at Six Flags in 2008 when I was 18. I would always find people in areas they were not allowed to be in. Usually some teenagers messing around or people trying to get it in at the time, so I got used to watching the pathways to these areas because I could catch people before they got into the place. So I saw young-looking couple starting to sneak back into an area all smiling and laughing. So I start to make my way to follow them. I eventually get into the pathway and cannot seem to find them. I start to hear muffled sounds from around a corner. Now, this is usual for people who are trying to get it in. I walk around the corner to find the guy with a pocket knife into this 21-year-old girl's stomach. Immediately, I run over and tackle the guy and secure the knife. Turns out they were a couple, and the guy was mad at how she looked at some other guy in the park. I will never forget the scumbag's face. Also, on a side note, caught a guy trying to take a lost kid out of the park. I was basically the last line of defense for when we are looking for lost children. I was put outside the park in between the parking area and the exit. My coworker decided he wanted to go smoke at the time and was not paying attention. He offered me a cig, but I don't smoke, so I declined and kept a close eye out. I saw the child and starting walking over to the guy. Once he saw me, he started running while dragging the kid behind him. I never ran so fast in my life to catch someone. Once I saw the kid screaming and crying while getting dragged along the pavement. The girl survived that attack since it was a small knife and he only got one stab. Also, she didn't want to press charges either. Seemed to me she was one of those girls stuck in a abusive relationship, and the kid turned out fine. The guy got arrested. Also, somehow his eye socket and jaw both got broken when I tackled him. Story 3. I saw a friend I had made at summer camp get hit by lightning. That dude survived, after CPR from the staff there, and has a bad scar going from his shoulder to his feet. Story time. We were getting back to the cabins after coming out of the lake, swimming because the weather was getting nasty. As we got our stuff and were walking back, we heard the loudest sound boom ever. Still remember it to this day. I still have a phobia of lightning thunder and a white flash. We saw it hit a huge tree next to us, and we all bolted to the cabin as fast as possible. The staff did a head count, and my camp buddy Jonathan was missing. The head staff girl ran out to look for him. Sure enough, he was lying on the ground next to the tree, which was missing a few branches and smoldering. Girl brings him back to the cabin, does CPR, etc. Most of us were still literally in shock, crying. I was mainly frozen in fear and amazement at the same time. Story 4. In high school, we had a special education class, the only one in the entire district, so we had a high concentration of those with mental deficiency to varying degrees. While they had special classes, they shared classes like gym, art, and drama with everyone else. There were 2 kids who always hung out together. Not exactly sure what was wrong with them, but they acted flamboyant with the mentality of a 5-year-old. It was to the point that one wouldn't go to the washroom without the other. And for the most part, teachers would allow this knowing they would have tantrums. Midway through science class, I get up to take a leak. I go into the washroom and see both of them Spider-Man'd up on top of the toilet stall taking dumps from orbit. I'm in shock, thinking what the hell. One of them makes eye contact and panics. He loses his footing, falling into the poo crescendo. Then it happens. The other guy starts dropping poo orbital strikes onto his fallen comrade, laughing like a maniac. At that point, I bolted and walked back into science class, white as a ghost. My teacher asked what was wrong, and I stammered out, I think you need to go. You need to go to the bathroom. He rushes down the hall, and I hear, Jesus freaking Christ, really? While not the most gruesome thing I've witnessed, but the most shocking for sure. Story 5. I used to work at a special needs summer camp, severe to profound mental disabilities. So I've seen a lot of strange things. But one thing that sticks out is not something the campers did, but the counselors. It was evening, and almost everyone is off. I'm in the dining hall to grab something to eat, but first I need to pee. So I walk into the restroom, and there are 4 guys and 1 girl in there. I freeze, because 3 of the guys are standing in the corners of the room, wanking. The last guy is in the middle of the room with the girl, and he says with a big smile on his face, I won. The girl is just all kinds of emotions, excited, embarrassed, confused, maybe a little bit horny, and these 2 are cheering the others on. The girl then explains they're having a wanking race, and the guy in the middle of the room just won, and they're fighting for the second spot now. About then, one guy comes to the wall, happiness is had. I'm just so confused now. I don't recall what I did, probably said congrats and got out because what hell. That's summer camp, y'all. Story 6. Walked in on my then boyfriend, using my hot pink without asking. A guy had spent the night at my place, and I needed to leave early the next morning, but said he could stay around as long as he wanted. We were messing around a little, and he said he would finish himself off after I left. After I'd gone, I realized I'd forgotten something and went back to get it. When I got there, I noticed he'd locked the door to my bedroom inside my apartment. As I was unlocking it, he called out, "Wait, hold on." We'd been dating for a while, and I knew he was getting off, so I was confused. I opened the door anyway and see this super tall, hyper-masculine, not particularly sexually open guy on all 4s on my floor, surrounded by my toys, including a hot pink suction cup dildo and some Benoit balls reappropriated as beads. I just kind of paused in shock for a minute. This was not something that we'd discussed before. None of these were for use. These were all really expensive, really nice toys, and I had someone waiting for me in my car, so I had to just sort of take in the scene and run. Story 7. Walking home from class one morning. On the opposite side of the street, I see a woman with a high melanin concentration bent over, dress hiked up, panties around her ankles, and smoking a pipe. She is, of course, getting reamed from behind by a dilapidated-looking fellow, also possessed of high melanin, with one hand on her ass and the other behind his head like a boss. He turns his head, we make eye contact, and then he gives me a huge smile and a sup nod. I just keep on walking, just another day in the Tenderloin. The best part about this story was how completely oblivious the woman was, not a care in the world, except that pipe. Story 8. Was on a run, and a cheating wife was a man by a school while her child watched. Me and the cross-country team were going on a run at a public park with an elementary school 200 yards or so away. There was a mowed field behind the school, and we were bored, so we decided to run back there. We came across 2 people full out in the middle of the field within full view of the school. This was 15 minutes or so after school had dismissed, and there were still some students around the school. The woman's child was standing right there asking to go home, while the mom was begging her son to not tell dad. Story 9. Saw a guy brains out. Was at a gas station getting my daily fix of Diet Coke, and as I was leaving the store, I saw that a bunch of cops moving towards this van in the parking lot. The guy went behind the van, put a to his head, and pulled the trigger. Turns out the guy had gone on a spree, his wife and kids, and then shot up an insider trader's office. Had nightmares about that stuff for months. Story 10. I work in a supermarket in the UK, and we had a mentally challenged guy working for us. One day in October last year, a customer came up yelling about the yard with the trolley. After a quick hunt, we found him midway down the main aisle with his out, furiously jerking and licking his lips. He only stopped when our security guy threw a towel over him and dragged into the offices. Story 11. Roommate doggy styles an incredibly obese girl on her period. She poops all over him, herself, the couch, can't right herself, and falls into a puddle of poo. My roommate had a couple of hambests over. Walmart wonders, as it were. They looked and smelled like they hadn't bathed in weeks, and they were smoking it up on the couch without the windows open. So I said hello, waved, gave him that questioning look of, "You're not really gonna do this, are you?" And opened the windows, turned on the fans, etc. He said they'd be going out for drinks, invited me along, but I declined and stayed home. I fell asleep before they got back. So it's probably like 3 or 4 a.m., and I wake up to a fwup fwup schlup fwup 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 sound coming from the living room. God damn it, really. But I had to pee, and the only way to get there was to go right by them. So I stumble out, just as Hambest Tumber 1 lets out this blood-curdling moan shriek. By impulse, I just go, "Holy hell, shut the hell up, my freaking ears." Deer in headlights mode, engage. Then I see it. There's blood and upended beer all over the previously white couch. The girl's just staring at me with this growing look of horror, but my roommate is still fwup-fwup-fwupping away. I'm staring at all of the blood, and then she's suddenly like, "No, no, 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 stop, wow." And then silence. My roommate gets this look of utter revulsion on his face. You didn't?" "You did, oh God," and pulls out of her ass as she projectile poops all over the couch and him. He jumped back, but not in time to avoid getting sloshed with the next wave. The stupid girl was just kneeling there, pushing out wave after wave. Help me out. I can't get up," as she continued to pump out poop. That freaking smell. I ran into the kitchen and puked into the sink. He ran into the bathroom and did likewise. I go back to survey the damage, and she's still freaking kneeling there in doggy mode. The couch is thoroughly messed up. The entire apartment now smells like death, and she's now bawling her eyes out. Okay, hell. Okay, look, this is freaking terrible. I don't know what to say. This is really freaking gross. I can't believe, like, what the hell? But okay. Let's get you cleaned up, and then you two dolts are going to freaking fix this. She just looks at me with these doe eyes. But I can't move. What? Help me up? No, I am not going to step into that ooze. I can't get up by my. And she teeters under her own weight and falls sideways off the couch into the pool of her own poop. My roommate reappears at this point, and I just look at him, make a few unintelligible what? I don't what? Fix, now. Dismay squeaks, grab my stuff, and go spend the night in a hotel. Story 12. I think I witnessed a woman commit suicide. To this day, I'm not sure if it was on purpose, but I know I saw her die less than 20 feet from me. We were standing on a corner waiting to cross a street. There was a bus about to turn the corner, and the signal for crossing had just turned to the red hand, saying that it wasn't safe to cross. I remember her looking at the bus, the sign, and then at me. She smiled at me for a brief moment, and then she started to cross the street, speed walking a bit. I don't know if she was trying to cross quickly and beat the bus, or if she was intentionally trying to get hit, but she got hit. The bus wasn't going fast, but it knocked her a few feet. The bus immediately stopped. Somebody walked over and realized she was out and possibly going into cardiac arrest. So they started to preform CPR, and somebody called 911. I believe she was declared dead when they arrived on scene. I just stood there shocked and didn't know what to do. My head was spinning, and I felt confused, unsure of what I had seen. As the police were trying to clear the scene, I remember being asked if I saw what happened. And I remember lying because I was in such shock at the chain of events. I told them that I didn't know, that I just wanted to sit down. The rest of the day I felt sick and confused. I was registered to preform CPR. It isn't as if I had sat there and failed to perform. Somebody else was at her side nearly immediately. But to this day I feel guilty about it. I feel guilty about not acting and not telling the truth about what I saw or being there to try to help. I'm still shaking as I type this. I feel misty-eyed as I recall it. I was only 16 or 17 at the time, and now I'm almost 22, but it still haunts me from time to time, the smile on her face. Some of my family knows the story, a couple of friends, but this is the first time I've told it with this level of detail, the first time I've talked about the effect it had on me, the first time I've admitted my guilt. I just hope that the way I reacted that day doesn't make me a bad person. I hope her family and friends got closure, and I hope it wasn't on purpose. But looking back on it, I feel there was no way she could have thought that bus wouldn't have hit her. Story 13. Once I slept in my friend's living room but needed to take a piss. In my drunken haze, I mistook the guest room as the bathroom. I opened the guest room and there was my friend, wearing nothing but boxers and a motorcycle helmet, kneeling down with his one arm extended out, reciting Lion King's Circle of Life speech to someone on webcam. I shut the door and acted like nothing happened. Story 14. I lived in Vegas for years and saw some crazy stuff. I used to ride public transit to my dealing job on the Strip. It was just easier. One day, while reading the bus to work, I saw this dirty-looking tweaker shove his hand down a boy's, maybe 5, pants, in front of the kid's mother. She started screaming, and the guy was restrained by fellow passengers on the bus. A few stops later, 4 cops boarded the bus, dragged the guy out, and planted him face down on the hot pavement, very roughly. Incidentally, Vegas cops are not to be trifled with. They'll shoot you for sneezing and they'll get away with it. It was a pretty shocking incident, even for Vegas. I've also seen people openly jerking on these buses, shooting up, puking, pooping, you name it. I even saw a knife fight take place not 10 feet in front of me. Forget the Vegas floor shows. Ride the buses. Story 15. Me and my crew got called to an accident. Car flipped over on an icy road and landed upside down in the ditch next to the road. We proceed there with horn and lights on. The man was crumbled up behind the steering wheel. We get to work, trying to get him out. Cutting his seatbelt, he fell down. At this point, I'm next to him checking for vitals and get nothing but he is bleeding from his mouth and a head wound. So this is reason enough for me to think that he is still alive. His heart is still pumping. We cracked the car open like an oyster with our hydraulic tools to get a better hold on him. We needed to drag him to the trunk to get him out there. The doors were both blocked off by the ditch. So still laying face to face with the man who was on his way to work, I saw a small plastic bag with sandwiches and a banana falling out of his coat pocket. The lock on his watch was broken. His watch was dangling loosely on his wrist. The stopped. His face turned ash. I just looked at a 52-year-old man, father of 2, husband, longtime worker in Scania factory, dying in a freaking ditch because of a small slippery stretch of road which got icy because the wind made it slightly colder than the rest of that road. He could not have known. He lost control of his small car, started to slip, crashed into a light post, flipped over a couple of times and landed in a ditch. I am a firefighter. Death is part of my work. That is why I celebrate life as much as I can. Life can end because of the wind. I saw the life seep away from that man, and it chilled me to the bones. Story 16. Not me, but my best mate's sister. She used to work in a nursing home. One day was tending to a lady who had her hand in her dressing gown and would not answer to any question or instruction. Friend's sister noticed a horrible smell, old lady's gown dropped, and she had defecated herself and was using the feces as a kind of looby and was rubbing herself out. Story 17. My old college roommate had a sister. We were passing through his hometown on the way back to LSU after a weekend at my home. We stopped to see her. During casual conversation standing there holding her 1-year-old son, she shows us her mastectomy scar and says, "Mom is really pissed, but I had a good reason." Neither of us asked her to elaborate, and the conversation continued, but she kept working back around to, "I had a good reason. I had a good reason." Finally, when it became apparent that we weren't going to ask, she says, "See, the thing is me and Bill are swingers." And for a while we were afraid that he wasn't the father. Jaw freaking dropped. I'd met this girl exactly once before this day, and she drops this bomb right in front of me. So by unspoken agreement, I never mentioned this to my roommate again, and he of course doesn't either. Cut to 2 years later, the two of us and another friend are in his hometown for the night, leaving to the airport in the morning for Mexico. We all go out drinking with sis and bro, have a good time, but the 3 of us leave them at the bar since we have a flight in the morning. I wake up at 3 in the morning, and needing to piss and having a sleep boner take to walking through the living room where I encounter sis and bro, plus a camera on a tripod, and another couple I recognize from the bar going to town, right in the living room. Friend's sister is getting finger cuffs by both dudes, while the other woman cheers them on from the couch. Seeing my pitched tent, the woman on the couch assumes I've been watching them from the shadows and freaks out, since they didn't know anyone else was in the house. Accusations start flying, and before I know it, there is a 4-way co-ed all nudie, knockdown dragout fistfight, all still being caught on the camcorder. I am still standing there with my jaw dropped when my roommate and our other friend come running to investigate the noisy. My roommate makes eye contact with me, and all I can think to say is, "So where exactly is the bathroom?" Story 18. My friend was a foot prostitute. I would drop off pick up a female friend from someone else's house near mine. I thought she was buying or something like that. I don't smoke, so I just assumed she was hiding it from me to be respectful. One time I told her, "You know, you don't have to be so secretive. I don't care what you're doing in there." Well, turns out the guy that lived there actually had a foot fetish and paid her to come over. He smelled her feet while laying on the floor and jacking off. Sometimes he also asked her to kick him in the face, leave her sneakers there, etc. Story 19. I went to a friend's house for a sleepover, and in the middle of the night I went to take a piss. But I walked into his parents' bedroom just in time for the money shot facial. They didn't even notice me for like a solid 5 to 10 seconds. It's hard to look at your friend's mom once you've seen her smearing all over her face. I honestly had no idea what was happening at first. I was pretty young when this happened. So I was kinda dumbfounded and just stood there with a puzzled look on my face. Story 20. Driving to visit family around Memorial Day weekend, a huge string of bikers were taking up the left-hand lane on the highway. There was probably about 50-60 of them. I'm driving my little Mazda 3 when I see the biker next to me get bumped by his buddy from his left. Suddenly, the scene slowed down into a grotesque domino effect of people being thrown into ditches and onto the road. As I started to pull onto the shoulder, I watched a large biker get thrown off of his bike. He slid face down onto the pavement for quite some time. There was a large growing puddle of blood surrounding his head. I watched as his exposed skin turned ashen gray. We got out of the car, offered blankets, water, and first aid supplies to the nearest bikers. Looking around the highway, it seemed as though it was almost apocalyptic with the crumbled bikes and screaming bikers strewn about. To this day, I'm terrified of driving anywhere near a biker. Story 21. Nothing too crazy. My good buddy lived in a 2-story, 3-room condo with his grandma. She lived on the bottom floor and my friend lived on the top. One day I go over to visit and his grandma lets me in and tells me they're upstairs. Not even thinking about it, I go upstairs and walk right in the room. On the bed is my friend's girlfriend on her back, with her head propped up by 2 pillows, and my friend only wearing a shirt and socks, hovering over her, with his in her mouth, just going to town. I took one good look, screamed like a little girl, and ran back downstairs. The grandma looks at me and says, "Oh, sorry, I forgot to tell you he was with his lady friend." Story 22. One time, I went to play my friend's Xbox. All of the boxes for the games were empty, and the discs were all stacked one on top of each other. Story 23. Asda in the UK. Me and a friend were on the daily after-work routine of buying energy drinks and chocolate eclairs when we overhear a child screaming from an aisle down. Me, being the inquisitive bugger I am, go to investigate. I come round the corner to see a child, laying on his back, shirt over his head, repeatedly screaming, "Hitler, Hitler, Hitler," with his mother trying to make him be quiet. I was crying with laughter. Story 24. Not myself, but a story that my mom told me of which I will never forget. Herself and her friends used to jump off this bridge into the river. The bridge was a 1-lane graded bridge without a sidewalk. There was a campsite nearby and was always busy in the summer. One day, my mom and my dad were spending the day jumping off the bridge when a young boy from the nearby campsite came down to watch. Just as he ran onto the bridge, a semi was driving down in his direction. The driver of the truck didn't see the boy, and he was crushed. The graded bridge acted like a cheese grater, my mom's words. The boy was instantly, and my mom rushed over to help. Because this happened in northern Saskatchewan, the nearest hospital was 6 hours away, so a helicopter was sent. My mom stayed with the boy until they arrived at St. Paul's Hospital in Saskatoon. She told me this story 2 years ago when she showed me the bridge for the first time. I could tell how hard it was for her to tell me, but in a sense, it provided closure to years of mental anguish. Story 25. I grew up in Dallas, Texas. We had a neighbor, I will refer to as Mr. L, that had been stressed for weeks, but was usually a chill guy and approachable. On a Saturday before school started back from summer holidays, I was with my stepdad at local strip mall getting a haircut. It was a good old buzz cut 8-year-olds get when you have cheap or broke parents. My cut was done and my brother was getting his. I saw Mr. L walk past the barber window and told our stepdad I was going to go say hello. When I walked out the barber door, I could see Mr. L walk into the pawn shop next door. As soon as I went to open the pawn shop door, I could see through the window he had a mask on and was robbing the pawn shop owner at point. Whatever was said in the next 4 seconds resulted in me watching my neighbor kill the pawn shop owner. That prepared me for growing up just outside downtown Dallas in the ghettos. Until then, I had always thought we lived in a really good place. I just thought everyone pushed shopping carts around and old dudes ate out of bins. So many realities after that. Mr. L ran out, dropped the and our stepdad stopped him. Our stepdad was a damn fool that thought he was a hero. This wasn't the first or last time he did something without thought. Mr. L got prison. Ended up. He was getting done for child abuse, many counts, many young boys, and thought he could get enough cash to go on the run. Story 26. In 5th grade, a kid that lived on my block invited me over to play Star Wars Battlefront 2 with him. We weren't really that good of friends, but we were talking about playing during school one day, and he didn't seem weird, so I decided to go over. After about an hour of playing the game, he said he had to go to the bathroom, and he would be right back. He was gone for a solid 10 minutes when I decided that I would look for him. I thought he was upstairs in the kitchen getting something to eat for us. Nope, so I went down to the basement. What I saw there will never get out of my mind. He had his pants and boxers completely off and on the floor. He was leaning against the wall with his arms, almost how someone stretches out their calves, and he was pissing and shitting on his floor. He saw me, quickly pulled up his pants and said, "It was the dogs. I swear it was the dogs." The funny thing was, he didn't even own a dog, or dogs for that matter. He had a cat. I quickly went upstairs, grabbed my controller and memory card, and freaking ran home. To this day, it was the weirdest thing I have ever experienced. Story 27. One summer, while I was in high school, I got a job volunteering at a nearby school for the blind. They had a summer camp there, so I was expected to stay with some of the teenagers, some of them around my age, some older than me, and make sure they stayed out of trouble, didn't do dangerous things. So, when I got there, I realized that the majority of my group was not actually blind, but were mentally handicapped in a variety of ways. That's fine. I don't really have any experience with this sort of thing, but there are other people working with me who do. However, this led to an incident that I was completely unprepared for. So, one day it was raining, so the campers were hanging out in a living room-style space, playing games and whatnot. I'm hanging out when suddenly I hear a slapping noise coming from the other end of the room. I look over, and one of the campers, who was about my age, had just whipped out his and started f***ing in the middle of the room. I, of course, have absolutely no idea how to handle this kind of situation. So I go over one of the male counselors and just kind of awkwardly gesture to the fapper. This counselor goes over and immediately starts lecturing the kid on appropriate hands. However, this kid's not hearing any of it. Just keeps on f***ing right in this guy's face. They ask him again. He's still not taking it. Eventually, they have to have another counselor drag him to the bathroom to wash his hands. He doesn't there for like 10 minutes. For the rest of my time there, I am assigned to higher functioning groups that I am more qualified to handle. Story 28. One of my friends dared another to put an electric dog collar on and walk past the invisible fence. He walked away from the house about 50 feet before he lost all muscle control, collapsed on the ground, and started flopping around like a fish.